Want to get the best audio possible in a variety of uses? Stay tuned and I'm going to show you what the PR-4 system I have put together has to offer. Welcome to another edition of Tech Bytes with Ron Nutter, your home for all things relating to smart home technology and a few other things occasionally. In part 1 of this series, we will cover the components for you to consider when setting up your budget home studio setup so you can create the best recordings you can without breaking the bank. There will be additional videos in this series in the coming weeks and months. Hi, I'm Ron Nutter, and we will be looking at going through all these items together. There are a variety of options for each item we're going to discuss. There's no right or wrong choice. I'm simply laying out what I have gone with and I'm using for my own setup. For any items mentioned in this episode, there are affiliate links in the description. If you click on these links, I may get a small commission, but that won't affect the price you pay for the item. If you want to get notified when new content is uploaded, please click on subscribe and enable the notifications. If you like the video, I'd appreciate that. Every little bit helps in my running the channel. There are several product reviews out on the PR-4. My intent is to cover topics you may not have seen in other reviews. Item 1. Power for multiple power sources. This is a feature you may not have heard about before. It starts with a user-replaceable battery. If you haven't heard of the NP550, it's more common than you might think. Stay tuned. I've had several Sony cameras for several years where this battery has been the one for power. While it may not be found at your corner convenience store, it is readily available from online sources. There are two other inputs available. One is the USB-C connector on the side of the PR-4, and the other is a 4-pin, what's called a push-pull connector that is common in the commercial sound world. Here's where this all comes together. Let's say that you're in the middle of recording audio and you get the proverbial low battery warning. Now, let's face it, we've all run into that one. Shutting down the recorder isn't always an option. Plug in a power bank on the USB-C connector, turn on the power bank. You should shortly be able to remove the NP550 in the PR-4 and it should automatically switch over to the power bank on the USB-C port. Replace the NP550 with a fresh pack. Shortly after that, you should be able to unplug the USB-C power. Try this several times in a non-critical situation so that you're not committing hara-kiri before you really understand what's going to happen. And you may find that this doesn't work for you. Just get familiar with the process. Like I said before, it's a do or die situation. Since I already had several NP550 batteries, I decided to use the batteries that I already had on hand. At some point, I may go to the Deity branded battery. The NP550 batteries I have run between about 2200 to 2500 milliamp hours. This means you may need to change the battery settings in the PR-4 to 2200 mAh. This alters the charging to reflect a smaller capacity than the Deity branded battery, which is at about 3320 milliamp hours. This helps prevent overcharging of the battery and to help ensure that the battery display that shows on the main screen of the PR-4 is as accurate as you could hope for. Item 2, fail safe on shutting off the recorder when a recording is in progress. I ran across this one purely by accident. One time I was recording with my PR-4 and tried to power it off because I thought I was finished. Well, when the PR-4 didn't power off, I started looking for a reason that would explain this. I noticed that I had somehow enabled recording, didn't realize it. I turned the power back on, stopped the recording, and I noticed this time that the PR-4 did shut down as expected. Now, just for the record, I'm running the 1.2 version of firmware. That may or may not be important, but since there was new firmware installed at the time I did this, I wanted to make sure that I let you all know about that. It would be a good idea to check this behavior still exists when the newer firmware is applied. As with anything, I find that this isn't in the manual, no criticism on Deity, and I repeated the test several times. As I repeated the test, I stopped the recording without touching the power button. I noticed that after a second or two, the PR-4 did shut down in an orderly process. No error messages were displayed on the screen. Item number 3. File timestamp retains accuracy even when powered off. I frequently record audio for multiple videos at one setting. Now with my PR2, I had times where the file stamps weren't getting consistently applied. After working with Deity Tech Support, I found there was a workaround in the Citus app that made this a little bit easier, and I could consistently get it to happen. It meant going through a few steps manually each time I powered up the PR2. Small price. But with the PR4 and a built-in version of the TC1, this is no longer a problem. I still check the time on the PR4 each time I power it up, and if it's drifting more than a few seconds, then I'll do a manual sync using the Citus audio app on my smartphone. Having each audio recorded with a unique timestamp helps avoid having to go through each file to verify what it is, because it helps me confirm the order in which each recording was done, and then as I do that, I'm modifying the name of the file. That way, when I go through the combining process of the audio and video, then I'm merging the right sections for each video and audio clip combination. Item number 4, naming the SD or SSD on the PR4. I don't know about you, but it's common enough for me that I'll have one or more drives labeled on my computer as no name or untitled that I need to do something with, so that I'm not working with the wrong device. From a PC or Mac, you can rename the device to something that works for you. You will need to engage the SD or SSD, depending on how you're doing it, in your PR4, rename it, and then eject it. Repeating this process with the other device until you've got it all done. Only when you reformat either device will your custom name disappear. And that makes sense because you're completely frushing the process. So it's like you're starting with all new media. So just as you do this, just do one side, then the other, and then repeat it, much like lather, rinse, repeat, and this will work out pretty well. I find it handy when I'm doing a lot of recordings that I only work with my primary device instead of going to the backup, because I try to leave the backup alone just in case something happens. Item 5, using the XLR microphones on tracks 3 and 4. Now, this isn't something that may not be readily apparent if you're new to the XLR world or haven't had to go through an adapting process. You can use XLR mics on tracks 3 and 4, just not ones that require, well, you can try doing phantom power, but since what's really going on is you're dealing with a special cable and it's taking a 3-wire connection, the TRS that plugs in to the designated connector on the right-hand side of the PR4. You just got to have to look at this a little bit differently. Tracks 1 and 2 are considered balanced inputs. That's because the balanced cables use 3 wires to cancel out noise or interference. This makes the use of longer cables an option because of that property. Now, to use XLR mics on tracks 3 and 4, you're going to need to use a 3.5 millimeter TRS tip ring shield, or what I would look at as a stereo connection. That's not totally accurate, but that's just the way I've looked at it. The cable that breaks it out into 2 XLR female connections. This is an unbalanced connection because unbalanced cables only use 2 wires. So the one thing they will share in common is the shield will be common to both. Due to that, you may get some hum or buzz. This is fine for short cables. Keep in mind that you may have some additional issues to deal with. So that's why typically I will only use with balance. And with the kind of recording I do, it's going to be unusual that I'll go beyond tracks 1 and 2. Searching for the denoiser option. This was probably one of the most frustrating things I dealt with on the PR4. I spent several hours looking for this option. The online searching I did said it was a hidden option in basic and only available in the expert mode. Another search reported that this feature was only available in the Citus audio app, and it goes without saying that I kept records of what I found just so that I knew I wasn't losing my mind. My next call was to the reseller I purchased it from. Without going into details, I got no answer. What I was told is, well, highly technical things like this take a while to learn. and needless to say, I don't work with that reseller anymore. I finally reached out to Deity support and got the answer that helped. Apparently, somewhere in the process, after they were creating the online web pages, they had renamed the option to noise reduction. This is available in both basic and expert modes, and you do have some degree of adjusting. As with the other Deity options, if you set the level down to 0, you've effectively turned it off. Do several test recordings and see what works best for you, and just take it one step at a time. No need to rush through this. What are the 4 small rectangular holes on the metal cage to be used for? These are meant to be used as shock mount attachment points when you're doing the stereo ORTF field recording configuration. Hey, you're going to get some confusing information here about being balanced mics and paired mics, and this is just going to take a little bit of experimentation, because you'll see this when you look at more of the background information for ORTF, and it sets up the recording not really stereo, but you're aiming the mics at an angle to reflect what the human hearing would pretty much do. Cage option step 2. What am I using the cage for with my PR4? Well, what the cage is meant to do is mount your PR4 to your camera and keep it right where you're needing it to be, so you can make whatever adjustments on the fly. In my case, I'm using it as an additional level of protection for my PR4. Since I am using it in a home studio, I know what dropping the PR4 onto the floor could mean and the damage that could happen. And I've actually gone through this with a fairly expensive piece of equipment, and it hit just the right way on the floor, and I had to send it back to the factory. I'd had it for barely 2 weeks, and needless to say, the repair bill got a little expensive because they had to replace the front panel, and I think there was a circuit board that had to be dealt with. So it's just, it's a matter of, would you rather pay a little bit now or potentially a lot more later? A side benefit from this is sometimes I'm actually sitting in my recliner when I do the recordings. The additional weight of the cage plates makes it a little heavier, just enough that it doesn't move when I've got it on the armchair. You may not run into it, but that is an option. In my case, for mobility issues, I have this to keep the recorder in place, and I don't have to worry about rearranging a bunch of things, and it just makes life a little bit simpler. It also helps with some protection for the 3 knobs that are on the front panel, because you'll notice they seem to have a little bit of a wiggle, and that's by design with what Deity used in that situation. So in the event of a drop, it might just help what could prevent an expensive repair, because it does change how the PR4 is going to drop. And without trying, I actually had it slip off the desk one day, and you can imagine the verbiage I was using. Because of the weight of the plates, it landed on the plates. The knobs never took any hit or anything. So at that point, that justified the cost of the cage for the PR4 to me. Segment 3, the Deity 140 watt GAN power. What makes this different from the other GAN chargers? It's customized for the Deity DQC2 fast charging process, which ensures that the 100 watt power output of the C1 adapter, which actually becomes 140, will make sure that you get the quickest recharging possible. Now, you need to make sure that you've got a USB-C to USB-C cable that's rated for at least 100 watts, and if you go on a little bit more, that's not necessarily going to be a bad idea. Deity has such a cable that you can order, and I found one through another option, so there's more than one way to make this work. There are others you can use, but read the specs closely if in doubt. Using the Deity cable should help prevent some finger pointing if you have a problem when you need to talk with support. Item 2, it can be used for charging more than the PR4. What I mean by this is there's a whole set of standards that come with this, and Deity really thought this one out. So the standards you're looking at is PD, which is power delivery 3.1, PPS up to 5 amps, QC, which is the quick charge 5.0 standard, QC 3.0, SCP, FCP, AFC, that's not the football, APLLE 2.4, PE Plus, and there's a whole other level of protocols that are supported, but the website doesn't really go into detail on that. What is PFC that I see listed in the specs for the GAN power adapter? It stands for Power Factor Correction, a circuit design that was used in the high wattage charges, and this makes sure that the energy draw from the wall is smoother and more efficient. What does GaN stand for? It stands for gallium nitride. This is a more efficient way than traditional silicon at doing charging. Due to that, it's going to help the charger run a little bit cooler. And let's face it, the cooler electronics run, the better it's going to be for you. Segment 4, field audio bag. Item 1, mounting option. Now this has MOLI, which stands for Modular Lightweight Load Carrying Equipment. We have the military to thank for that acronym. Mounting options on both the front and the sides. Now while this is meant for primarily wireless receivers, if you're bringing, the wireless into the recorder that way, but you can use it for other things. There is also a full-length hook and loop strip across the front and back for other items such as cable management, and it can serve as a connection point for the clear rain shield that comes with this. And when you're not using this, I also use that rain shield as just a cover to make sure that if something were to get dropped on it, you've got a little bit of protection to it. Item 2. The side pockets on both sides allow for easy connection to the power, mic, headset, etc. that are all easily reachable. And if you're only recording but not doing anything with putting a headset on or like you can leave the other one zipped up. It's going to make it easy to go, and you can also store on the left pocket that you can store the USB-C to USB-C cable for charging, or if you want to connect to your digital audio works. The PR-4 with the cage installed easily fits in the audio bag. Now you may have to kind of jiggle it around just a little bit, but that should not be a problem. And it makes me feel a little bit easier knowing that I've got an additional level of protection on the PR-4, and if I do take it out, then I can sit there and it's got the cage on it, so if I want to run it outside of the mini bag. The rain cover, like I said earlier, and this is item number 4, also does double duty as a dust cover. Now it's not totally sealed, but it's better than leaving it out in the open if you use it, or don't use it rather, for extended periods of time. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will see videos on the screen that are similar to the one you've just watched, or other content that YouTube thinks you might be interested in. If this video helps you or provides value, please click on the like button, thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please click on subscribe and enable notifications. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.